Hello, this presentation is for building the survival analysis for Class DCS 517, Applied Data Modeling and Analysis, and I am Portia Daniels-Blaylock. So during this presentation, I will be discussing this week's topics as listed here, and that's imported and loaded the data to perform the exploratory data analysis, completed the data processing, completed the survivor modeling and test, then provided the comments and feedback for the survival analysis. So let's dive in. I started with loading the data, doing the review and analysis. I did make note of the shape because it will be very important in some of my conclusions. I then took a look to determine what columns may be null. I then did a describe just to take a look, and then further specified which columns and identified which columns have a null value. I moved on to resolving the null values by using mean. I did a validation check and then validated that I had resolved the nulls. Here I did more cleanup. I did some future engineering. More sanity checks after resolving issues and doing further feature engineering. Here I have the group indicator to break out the two different groups. Took a look at more validating to make sure that the separated groups looked as expected. Then I began the different steps, and I'll just sort of skim through here. I will elaborate on these areas with screenshots, still pictures, so that I can elaborate further. But I did go through all of the steps in the notebook. Upon completing each step, I provided observation, which I went into detail with steps 5 and 6. In this particular section, I did break out the indicator by itself and then the predictors. And here's the section by itself. And I'll scroll back down, the one with the indicators. And I will elaborate on the results here further in this presentation. Again, I provided the observations and described them further and elaborated on them more in sections 5 and 6. And here I am into those sections 5 and 6. But I did also provide screenshots for the sections under step 5. I did not for section 6, but I did make a conclusion, and I will move on. So next, I have here the step 2, which it elaborates on the Kaplan-Meier survival Q, where it compares 2 groups, the control group and the treatment group. The group which has the higher survival probability, also the slower completion over time, is the control group. More details for these groups are provided in my notebook. Next, here performing the log rank test, I found that the test statistic value was very low. There is not a significant enough difference, so more review of the data is needed. I then moved on to the Cox proportional hazard modeling. Various steps were taken here for the execution of this model. The steps included creating the Cox data frame, fitting the data, and adding the group indicator to separate the 2 groups out and review them more. This all landed here. The circled items are elaborated further in the notebook. Here I have indicated the summarized comments from the results section. The previous slides' values are elaborated here and further in the notebook, or more in the notebook. Here are the 2 captions for the remaining topic for step 5, where I'm elaborating on there is not being enough strong evidence to claim meaningful performance difference for the 2 groups, giving the further review via the Cox model results. In conclusion, I did not include screenshots from step 6. However, given the results of the data, further analysis with more details and volume could provide more valid and positive results to help stakeholders, help the forecast, and help make better decisions. Such will be also helpful to ensure fairness and transparency and to be compliant.